Hi, everybody. I am here with my friend Lauren Pope, and I'm so excited to talk with her about the Welcome Party and her role in that movement. We have a lot to cover as far as digital presence and online influence. I'm obsessed with the Substack that Lauren helps run, and actually, her presence on Substack is what got me on the platform. So I'm excited to talk to her a little bit about that. But first, Lauren, would you mind to just introduce yourself for a couple minutes? And I would love to hear about maybe the last few years of your career and what led you into the Welcome Party movement.
As always, I always enjoy getting to catch up with you. You're such a lovely human, so it's always fun to catch up and talk. So thanks for having me on today. I'm super excited to chat with you. But yeah, so in terms of my past few years, it's been very welcome focused. So my co-founder Liam and we got connected in 2019, right after I was running the Better Work campaign in South Carolina, and when that ended, he and I got connected by a mutual friend, and it was welcome at first sight, right? So we were really excited about doing the work. So just for context, a welcome party is not trying to make a third party as someone recently thought we were. I was like, no, we're trying to make a more welcoming democratic party. We focus on what we call partisan centrism, and we focus on, what can we do on the left to ensure that more people feel welcomed in the Democratic coalition. So that all said, in 2019, we started a project called the Welcome Party to encourage more non-ideological voters to participate in the presidential primaries that were happening that year in 2020. So I live in South Carolina, so I was based here in South Carolina. Liam lives outside of Boston, so he was doing work in New Hampshire, and we were essentially like, hey, like let's try to focus on again the people who are not necessarily high on the van score to get outreach from campaigns, right? And we actually did a survey of some of these less ideological voters in both states in New Hampshire and South Carolina. We found that like less than 1 in 4 had actually been contacted by a campaign. And so we're like, man, like, do they even know that there's a primary coming up? Do they know that, there's campaigns and, candidates that want to reach them? And so we were trying to get those voters to participate in the presidential primaries because we know that, when you have a better representation of the electorate, you get a better, general election candidate, essentially, right? So say that to say,
More voters create a moderating influence. Um, that's something that I preach about all the time to candidates and campaigns. More voters is typically good, but yes,
totally,
go on.
totally. Yeah. Totally, 100%. I'm not going to get into last year's election cycle for that, but
Yeah,
yeah, more
set that
voters would have
aside.
been even harder Trump, and even more Trump.
Oh, Lauren, I lost your
Wins.
mic.
I said that to say, oh no, can you hear me?
Yep, I can hear you now.
Okay, sorry about that.
Okay, that's okay.
Um, but yeah, so we wanted to ensure that voters felt like they were, their vote was needed and wanted, right? Not just from a campaign, but just from a civil perspective, right? From,
Hmm.
wanting the electorate to be representative. So say that to say, we did that project in 2020 and then continued to do work with the Welcome Party. Obviously, COVID kind of was funky with it. Because this was literally January, February 2020, and then all of a sudden the world shuts down. And so didn't do a whole lot of welcome activity after COVID got really jump started in March and April of 2020. But then we refocused in 2021. We actually started our pack that year, the Welcome Pack. And we were doing some work in Ohio. That's that cycle with Tim Ryan. Ahead of the 2022 election cycle. And, we've been essentially just trying to focus on, again, ideological moderation and not necessarily, to force the party in one direction, but to say, like, no, this is actually where the voters are, right? My colleague Adam Frisch, who ran in Colorado's third congressional district, one cycle against Lauren Boebert, he's always saying, like, most voters are between the 240-yard lines, right? They're not on the 10s and the 20s. They're not in the extremes where a
Hmm.
lot of our party rhetoric is right now. And so we wanted to focus on the voters who are in the middle. We always call it the Win the Middle program. We have our slate of electoral program that we talk about winning the middle. And so we try to like really flesh out what does it look like to be a really truly representative of the electorate, not just on the left, but just generally across the country. we always talk about how like some people want to start a third party, and that's fine and all if that's what you want to do, but it's like we're not even really fully fleshing out the opportunities and the promise of current party structure. Steve Tellis, who's a guy who wrote this really cool piece called "The Future is Faction," and he's like, look, if we have more robust party factions, we can have better parties, right? The parties themselves are not structured to create the type of, programming and change that we want them to, or even that they were
Mhm.
designed to do initially. And so we have to build out robust factions. And so we tried to build out a robust centrist faction for the left. And so I'm kind of rambling here. I'm sorry. I'm not sure if I'm answering your question totally, but I'm trying to just get into like the thrust of our work, which is
Yeah.
centrist faction building, ensuring that the left has again a representative electorate for not only Democratic primary voters, but also just like people who are leaving the party, right? We started the Welcome Party to encourage Republicans and independent voters to participate in Democratic campaigns and coalitions. And now we're finding that we're trying to make a more welcoming Democratic Party for people who are, more conservative than the progressive faction of our party and who are wanting to leave it, right? We talk about how a
Mhm.
lot of people are wanting to be independent voters these days because they just think that Democrats are too extreme because so in some cases they are, and they're also, equating Democratic extremism with Republican extremism. So like, I'm just not going to be in a party at all. I'm going to be an independent. And we're like, no, like participate on the left, be a Democrat and just know that you're still welcomed in the Democratic Party.
Mhm. Yeah, there's so much coming up for me as I listen to you talk. For one thing, I'm remembering back to the first time that I met you, Lauren, and we were at an event in DC. I was just coming off of running a gubernatorial race in Oklahoma, a very red state, for a Democratic candidate who was moderate. Um, and as I was like kind of introducing myself to a couple people, I had them say, "You have to meet Lauren. You have to meet Lauren. Like, we have to introduce you to Lauren." And so, we got to meet at that dinner or reception that night. And, obviously, it's really amazing to meet someone where you have so much in common with them. It's like such a cool moment to have that connection, experience working in red states, experiencing coaching and campaigning for moderate candidates. We had a lot of common ground. But you cannot travel across the country and go to every reception in every city in every state, um, building this coalition of people one by one. And so the Welcome Party has chosen to really put a stake in the ground and build some digital presence and digital influence. I know on Substack. And so I'm curious about what those conversations and what that strategy was like. Where are you going to build this message? How are you going to do it online? And how are you going to reach people? Did you all like have a lot of conversation about that? Did you map it out or did you just jump in? I'm just curious like what those moments were like.
Totally. With a lot of the startup ethos, and obviously Welcome's one of those startups,
Mhm.
we call it political entrepreneurship. We just try things. We do things. And if it works, it works. If it doesn't stick, it doesn't stick, right? And we just always really loved Substack. We didn't always have a large presence on Substack. We went from like, a couple thousand people to now we have almost 30,000 people, which is exciting on Welcome Stack. But we were just trying to, talk about the problems that we were seeing on the left and also like the opportunities that were present, right? Because again, speaking of political entrepreneurship, there's so many different, there's so much talent on the left and there's so many cool ideas. And we really found that it's important for us to really flesh out what we think is important, which we find is, centrist faction building. And get to your point, like there's people all over the country. And honestly, the majority of people are more centrist, right? And yet they find themselves not feeling like they fit into even social media presences. They don't feel like they fit into, traditional news presences, even, right? They're reading stuff and they're like, this is just so liberal coded. Or they're reading stuff and they're just like, this is so conservative coded, right? They're not necessarily finding a home. And so we just wanted to, talk about things that we're seeing, talk about things we're frustrated about, and put it on Substack. And Substack's been just a great platform for us to do that. So to your point, we're continuing to build Substack. We have a podcast now that I host called the Depolarizers that we try to do more video content with. We have our Win the Middle slate that I mentioned that is highlighting very we call them aggressively centrist Democrats running in conservative leaning congressional districts across the country. So we have a, win the middle slate content that we put up about the voices and also like what these Democrats are talking about and how they're reaching voters in a very compelling way. That is again very akin to what this centrist audience online wants. So it's been really great and really wonderful. And we've just always enjoyed the writing piece of it, essentially, especially since, all of us love writing so much. So.
Yeah. Well, I'm often giving advice to candidates, and or to movement builders. And I do think this like the digital piece, the digital organizing piece, and just making sure that you are being very thoughtful about using online influence is sometimes missing. And I'm not sure why exactly, because obviously organizing online has been around for a long time since, Obama ran for president. I think that's sort of where we all look towards as when things shifted into this more like digital era. But what would you have advice for people who are building movements or trying to build a coalition? Like, where do you start with a digital strategy?
Well, I would just say, I think you mentioned something that just triggered my thinking, but like one thing that I've always been trying to like implore people to do is not be a depolarizing presence online, right? Because
Mhm.
when you think about the country and the way the world is set up right now, like you've got people living alone, particularly even in COVID times when everyone was by themselves. Like you have people who are living alone by choice or just because they happen to, or they're isolated in cities where they don't know as many people because the work is there, but their family isn't. Or you have, widows and widowers and, people who aren't living with family structures, things like there's all
Mhm.
sorts of people who are just like kind of isolated right now. And I feel like when they turn to social media, which is a normal human reaction, to, look online and look on Instagram and Twitter and talk TikTok and see what people are doing. They're finding, homes again in these very polarizing places, right? And so I
Mhm.
just always like implore people like don't be a polarizer, be a depolarizer, right? Because it's very easy to play into the very, catnip rhetoric of, this is bad and these people are good and we're going to call people names and we're going to do all the it's like that's not helpful, right? That's not helpful for
Mhm.
someone's soul, right? Like they're just consuming garbage, right? About talking trash about people and, belittling your neighbor and your friends, or even, your coworkers for that matter. It's not helpful to, build an American society that is
Mhm.
so polarized, right? And I think we all have a responsibility for people as people who are online and have digital presences to be depolarizing in our content and our creation
Mhm.
because like, whether or not we have large, social structures or not ourselves, it's incumbent upon us to ensure that we're not perpetuating unhealthy behaviors and unhealthy thought patterns in Americans,
Mhm.
right? We always talk about
I feel like you're inside my head right now, Lauren. Like I feel like like this is what I've been talking about over and over again. It's like we have to be responsible for the digital communities to which we belong. It's like no different than your neighborhood, like your community. If you want to show up and like scroll all day, you can't just complain about the content you're consuming. You have to be accountable for creating a new experience for the community. You are if you are logging in and showing up, like you are a part of that community and you need to be responsible and accountable for its diversity, for its inclusion, for its toxicity. Like you can create more positive, uplifting, educating spaces versus the polarizing. So I'm sorry to cut you off. I just feel like
no,
we're like
no, no. I'm glad to have a kindred
reviving.
spirit out there. It's always nice to be preaching to the choir, right? Where someone agrees and not
Yeah.
necessarily that you have to agree with me, but just like you understand where I'm coming from.
Yeah.
Because we can look, that's one thing I'm always saying is like we can have disagreements. Just again, don't be polarized in your disagreement, right? Talk about it in a constructive way, like you were just talking about. But no, you didn't cut me off. It's just really frustrating to see, how media has become entertainment in itself. Politics has become entertainment in itself. And it's like we are literally like we have celebrities in Hollywood who are designed and created for entertainment. It is not politicians' job to be entertainers, nor to be, again, polarizers. It is literally their job to govern and govern responsibly. And we are seeing less and less of that every election cycle, every year that we have.
Hmm. So I think that is a really good point because I think sometimes like when just like your average community leader, civic leader, or political candidate at the state and local level, when they look at political voices who are popular and influential online, they are often seeing people who are polarizing, who are extreme. And so there's not a lot of like mentors or models to look at for how you could build a presence and influence that is more pragmatic, more focused on collaboration and problem solving. Um, so that's what do you have folks that we should look to who are doing this well? And what would you say to a candidate who's stepping into a digital space, who wants to sort of like flip on that really polarizing switch just so that they can get more views and more engagement?
I mean, again, I think it really comes back to a lot of like actual deep philosophical personal questions of like, do you want to be a trend or do you want to be trendy or do you want to be an enduring presence that changes things for the better, right? Because you can be an enduring presence and mess some stuff up, right? Do you want your legacy to be that of division or that of unity, right? And I think that when people are, I mean, it's very enticing. It's very, attractive to, be in the spotlight and have people calling you from different media, TV companies and things like that saying, oh, I want you on, I want you on. But they want you on because you're a problem. Like, to be quite honest, they want you on because you're, a crap talker, right? And I feel like one thing that we have to do in the center is not feed into, again, the divisive and negative polarizing talk, because you can be compelling and interesting and not be polarizing, right? Those two things can
Mhm.
be at the same time. And so I think we just need to lean into that a lot more.
Yeah. So as far as building like the welcome stack, was there, has your presence and growth there been pretty steady? Or was there a moment where you're like, oh my gosh, like this is where we're really where we need to be. We need to keep generating this long form content, where it like really took off?
So, I mean, it kind of ebbs and flows, as I'm sure you understand. Sometimes we'll put out pieces and we'll gain a bunch of Substack subscribers, and then sometimes we'll put out pieces and lose a bunch of subscribers. So, it's just a matter of, what people want and how they're feeling in the moment, right? Because sometimes people get frustrated themselves and they're like, you know what, I am tired of this, collaboration crap. I want something different. And it's like, that's just how somebody felt that day, right? And it's not necessarily
Hmm.
who they are, it's just how they felt that day. And so they unsubscribed. But say that to say, we actually did this, they called it the Moderate Talent, Moderate Power Project at Third Way. So Third Way had this program where they were kind of incubating certain programs from different organizations, and our Substack was one of them. So we were able to do like more ads and gain subscribers, putting out certain types of content and whether it's videos or graphics or whatever to try to get people to come into the Welcome Stack world, which was really helpful. So we were excited about that and grateful to be part of that from our friends at Third Way. But otherwise, like I said, it's just it ebbs and flows, right? We got a lot of attention from Welcome Fest this year. And obviously that was actually, way more organic than people think it was. It was very word of mouth and basically just Substack putting it out there. So was really grateful to have, we had like 600 people in DC in June, and it was all centrist community and centrist faction building. And, whether everyone in the center agrees with each other, we all had some things that we had in common. I think that was really special to highlight. We, again, like, have different views in the center, but we all have a very strong, kind of intolerance for illiberalism and things that are not actually for building and sustaining a liberal democracy in our country, as well as, like I said, polarizing behavior, right? So if
Hmm.
you are, I always I try to make sure people know this, but like we're not anti-progressive. We're anti like progressive illiberalism and progressive again like polarization, right? If you're an extremist and you're an extremist in your rhetoric or your policy, like that's just not it's not what people want and not what people need in this time, right? So I just, always encourage people like, look, you are welcome in the welcome faction and the centrist faction here, but your illiberalism and your extremism is just not, right? So you as a human
Yeah.
are, but don't bring the other stuff.
Well, let's talk about Welcome Fest for a second because I know I am always like really grateful and humbled to get a Welcome Fest invitation from you. It feels personal. I don't know that it really is, but you're always
Oh,
like
it's personal. I send a lot of
nudging,
emails.
nudging me to come, and I haven't been able to come yet because I have another event that seems to be always on that exact same week. But anyway, I feel like this is the art of modern influence that you, Lauren, are actually doing really well, which is you have Welcome Stack, you have these digital platforms that are kind of popping and trending, but you also don't forget that organizing and coalition building is personal. And so you're reaching out to, the leaders who you want at Welcome Fest, and you're curating that personal event, to bring these like minds together because it's really powerful. Um, you're just doing such a great job at that. And I I wish more influencers would understand this art. You really have to move lots of different levers. It's not just like throw an event and then nothing. It's like this constant evolution of bringing people together and moving them along on their thought journey. Um, Do you do that with intention? Like what does that process look like for you guys as you're inviting people into Welcome Fest and planning that event?
Well, first of all, thank you so much. That's really sweet of you to say. I really do appreciate that because we do put a lot of time and energy and love into everything that we do, really. But yeah, like to your point, like it's just how you cultivate any relationship, right? When you have a friend,
Mhm.
it's like if you don't talk to them more than once a year, like you're cool, but like, do you really know each other? Do you really build intimacy? Do you really have a relationship, right? So it's the same thing with faction building, right? It's literally person to person. People talk about relational organizing, like we literally do relational organizing in the center, right? And I think that's something that people don't necessarily always lean into, which is fine, whatever. But when you want to build something, then that's like it's very important, right? Those relationships, that stickiness is incredibly important. Whether you're showing, force, right? When you have, like I said, hundreds of people in a room together, or you're just really trying to go deep with people and so that they trust you. They call you when they have problems. They call you when they're, worried about something and they want to troubleshoot with you. Like those things matter. And I
Mhm.
think that if you're so focused on being a polarizer and just being, a clickbait on Twitter, then you're not necessarily doing the work behind the scenes to do this, like I said, the stickiness that builds something like that is enduring and can really come together. Intentionality, yeah, it's 100% intentional. Obviously it's, by the grace of God that we get things done, really. We are always so grateful when people accept our invitations, right? When I, you know, put one out to Alyssa Slack and I was like praying, like, please let her come. And like, cause we didn't have a relationship before that, right? So we're just grateful that people want to come into our space. People see that, we are doing something worth spending time and energy with. So it's always very intentional and we try to operate in humility as much as we can, right? Like we're like, look, we don't even live in DC. None of us live in DC. We're not necessarily outsiders because we, have a lot of inside connections, but we're trying to do things in a different way that is not so, even DC coded. People talk about left and right. We're like, look, there's a DC mindset, right? Not to talk bad about our friends there, but they're just different. And the thinking there is different. And so
Mhm.
we have to try to do things from a perspective that is, again, as normal as possible, as human as possible, and as intentional and depolarizing as possible, because that's the way that we find that is building this.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting to hear you talk about like the DC perspective. I know, since I have been in and out of DC more the last few years at different convenings, there have definitely been situations where I feel like such an outsider. And there's actually been moments where it's been kind of painful, like it's hurt my feelings. I told a story on social media, it's been a few months ago, but I was at a dinner and the guy next to me like turned to me. He was like, literally said, be patient. We're going to have DC talk for a second. And then like turned to the person across the table. Like I wasn't even, because it was just so weird. And the conversation that he wanted to have with this person across from me was about Hakeem Jeffries and like the leader of the party. And I'm like, in the moment, I didn't like handle it the way I would have wanted to. Of course, like afterwards, I had all this stuff in my head about what I could have said or how I could have interjected myself. But it was so odd that this person would think that I've been a member of the Democratic Party since I was 18 years old. I've worked at some of the highest levels of the party in national politics and in local politics, and that I wouldn't have an opinion about the leader of the party to which I belong. It was just such a like in-person illustration of literally the DC bubble that everyone talks about. And I do appreciate that so much about the Welcome Party and the Welcome Stack is that you have voices, that are present from lots of different regions and cities and sizes of places. And they are welcome to participate in what the party is going to look like.
I mean, it's imperative. I don't know how any organized coalition can expect to relate to people they don't understand. Like, quite frankly, like,
Hmm.
and we saw that last year, right? 2024 was like, oh, let's talk about abortion and let's talk about democracy. And it's like, nobody cares. Like, hello,
Hmm.
reality check.
Yeah, it's so tough. Um, I actually just a few months ago, I went to the Oklahoma Democratic Party state convention for the first time. I'd never been before and helped get some friends elected to leadership positions there. And it was tough, like it was emotional, like, a chair who was there previously had been there for I think 6 years or something, and it was just time for a change. And yeah, I think I will just say I think part of what compelled me to go to that state convention is consuming content like the Welcome Stack. And it's almost like a shaking up of what I think is acceptable as a Democrat and and prompting me to be involved. So I think that's an important piece of what you all are doing as well, is just kind of like modeling it can be different, and the only way that it can be different is if you show up, and try and get involved. Is that is that part of like your, when you think about content and what your overall goals are with the Welcome Party, is that a theme? Is just trying to nudge more maybe moderate leaning Democrats to get involved?
Oh, 100%. I mean, and again, it's not even necessarily like we're trying to like force anyone to do anything. Like, look, we are talking about things. We're trying to be as honest as possible. We're trying to be as objective as possible. We're trying to look at the data in a responsible way, right? Because one thing that has been incredibly frustrating with progressives is they manipulate data and they manipulate data sets and make it say whatever they want them to say, right? And that's just really frustrating to see sometimes. But say all that to say, when you're honest, when you're authentic, when you're genuine, it goes a long way. And I don't think people understand that really. And it's just really frustrating to see. And even when we talk to candidates, like, you talk about welcome stack, we always want to reach people and, encourage people and remind people that they belong, like you said, in this party, right? Because, I'm pretty conservative as a Democrat. And I'm like, at any moment, look, I'm like, I'm out, right? And I don't want to do that, obviously. But like, it's like there's a lot of people who make it very, isolating to be more on the conservative end of our party, and we don't want people to feel that way, right? And even when we talk to candidates, like I said, I always implore them, like, look, be authentic to who you are, right? This is something that you actually believe in. Like, you don't have to like cater to welcome and cater to what we want to do. Like, just be you. I'm just telling
Hmm.
you what we're looking for, right? And we want to inspire people to go with their guts on stuff, right? We talked to our candidates from last cycle when we did like our debriefs from the 2024 cycle. And a lot of them were like, look, I wish I would have trusted my gut on the messaging. I leaned a little too far into what the consultants were saying that we should focus on in this election cycle, because it was what the national party wanted to focus on, and it wasn't what the voters in my district wanted to focus on, and I lost, right? And so that's like a big, like, glaring, problem, right? Is like, how do we encourage and empower people to be themselves? How do we encourage and empower
Mhm.
people to, not take the bait on whatever, again, progressive trend of the day it is, right? And so I think it's just a matter of like reminding people that, like, look, you're allowed to have these beliefs, you're allowed to have this ideology and these thought processes, and you're not going to be shamed for it, right? You might be shamed by
Yeah.
some people, but not by us. Hey, like, we're
Mhm.
friends here, we're all family here, right? And let's just continue to cultivate this community where you can, have the views that you have and not
Yeah.
feel like you have to, put yourself back in a box.
That's so wise. And I feel like we all have some like de-influencing that we have to do on ourselves. Like speaking of this DC bubble, it's like, you know, sometimes that consulting class in DC, they don't want to let other voices in. But at the same time, I have to remind myself that the DC consulting class doesn't have all the answers. It's like they are not like this like genius collective that's going to solve everything. You know, when I was running the statewide race here in 2022, I actually said that to my staff, like no one else is coming. And if you have an idea for how this could look different or be different, like no one else is running this race in this state in this year against this incumbent. Like I have on staff all these consultants, yes, but you guys on the ground are just as, wise to what we should do as they are. And so I do think some of that is like, as candidates and as campaign managers, you have to take like the polling and the advice that you're getting from out of state with this huge like grain of salt. Like it's not always going to be perfect for you. And there's just so much shaking up that I feel like needs to be done. And I know I'm preaching to the choir, but like the, the polling is not always going to be the exact right thing. And I think it's especially frustrating to Democrats in a state like mine because they feel like they just got the polling. It's like we just got the resources to be able to have this research and this data. And now you're telling me that I need to synthesize it and filter it through, some local perspective or through my gut. It's, I understand their frustration, but there's just, there's no other way than to like use your own brain and your own intuition on what you should be saying. So
Yeah.
now I'm the one rambling, but like
No, no, I mean, because at
I
the end of
feel
the day,
like
if you trust your gut and you fail, you can at least say, look, I learned my lesson, but like that's what I thought I was supposed to do, right?
mhm,
Because the worst thing is doing what you think you shouldn't do because someone else told you to do it and still losing. And you're like,
mhm.
what? I didn't even lose on my own accord, right? Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
so
Yeah, and I think it relates a lot to, what I've been coaching leaders and politicians to do online, which is I feel like we have this very conventional way of spending on media in political campaigns, and that is not working the way it used to work either. Okay? And so you can't expect to just dump $2 million onto TV and jump ahead by 8 points. I need you to be showing up in digital spaces organically over and over and over again, participating in long form content like Substack, like podcasts. That needs to be a bigger piece of the media mix. And I just don't feel like candidates are being prepared and coached well enough in those spaces. Are you seeing that as well?
oh, 100%. And I think one of the problems again is it's hard to go on a long form podcast when you have essentially, what's the word? Like,
Washed out all of your own personal beliefs.
precisely, actually, literally. Yeah. When you have just kind of surrendered your own authenticity to what you think the mold needs to be, it's very hard to talk for a long time, right?
Hmm.
Like, you're going to be saying the same stuff and it's not going to sound genuine and it's not going to sound real. And that's not what people want. The modern era that has given people so much more access to um, political leaders' lives. They're like, oh, I see that you have a family and you're a parent and you're, whatever and this and that. But then when you get on a podcast or something and you just sound like a robot, it's like, what? Like, I don't even, this isn't like the photos and the ethos don't match what you're
Yeah.
saying, right? And I'm not even talking about anyone specific. I'm just saying like in general, like genuinely, when you yield your genuineness to
Hmm.
again like this I call it the AI robot of the Democratic Party. Like when you sound like the bot, it doesn't go very far with people.
Hmm.
And in the age of again long form content with all these amazing creators, whether they're people we like or don't like, they can talk, they can have real conversations. And if we can't, then that's just kind of strange, right?
Hmm. Yeah, I totally agree. And that's what I've been trying to break into, some campaigns and get, paid to teach candidates how to do this because I just think it's so important. But I can't always convince, the people who are holding the purse strings because I think we're kind of addicted to this conventional media mix model. It's paying the consulting class, their direct mail fees, their media budgets. And so to convince them to spend not only a little more money on curating this digital presence for a candidate, but spending time and resources on training up a candidate in a different way. I think it's so important. I'm going to keep banging my drum about it and I know that you will too.
I appreciate you highlighting that because
Mhm.
yeah, there's a lot of problems. Doing things the same way and expecting different results. Like, right, we talk about insanity, right? Like,
Yeah. Well, and there's so many lessons learned, like on the governor's race, I was in a defensive posture so often. Like I was so afraid that someone was going to catch our candidate, in a viral moment that would go wrong. And it actually did happen. Like it did happen and it got turned into an ad. It was horrible. And I felt like it was all my fault, but in reality, someone was going to find, something to capitalize on. And then there were also moments that were so intimate and profound that I was kicking myself that there were not cameras, you know? And so I feel like I learned so much about it's actually the distance that you're creating with your candidate and virality and digital spaces is always bad. It's just bad. You should try your hardest to close the distance. Have more cameras, not less. Like that's what's going to train up your candidate to build muscle memory around those authentic moments, stories that they can always land on, pivots that they can always go to. You have to be ready. And we can't just like create walls and create that distance. It's not going to work.
100%. Sorry, I think I had a bug on my forehead, so I was trying to make sure it wasn't there. It's like something's flying in here.
Um, well, What what are you excited about as we move into an election year in just a few months? What races are you watching? What's going to be happening with the welcome party? Like what's coming?
So, Welcome has a slate of candidates. It's called the Win the Middle slate. We currently have 7 people endorsed this cycle, which we're really excited about. We have Kristen McDonald-Rivet, Tom Swazi, Marie Gluesenkamp-Perez, Adam Gray, Jared Golden, um, Rebecca Cook, and Janelle Stelson. And we're looking forward to adding some additional Democratic challengers for the 2026 cycle to that slate. So it's been really, really, really interesting to talk to so many candidates this year. We talked to like 50 or 60 candidates this year. It's been like nuts, which is exciting that so many people are running, but also a lot of opportunity for us to really be, again, authentic on what we want out of the
Hmm.
party right now and be unafraid about talking about it. Um, 2024 it was kind of an uncomfortable year at times just because it felt like there was things that were glaringly obvious to me that a lot of people weren't paying attention to or, noticing. And it felt very, just kind of like confirming, not that I wanted Trump to win, but that I was like, no, like this is what I was feeling, right? This is what I was tracking. And I don't think anybody else saw it. And I don't understand why nobody else could see this, right? It's like when you're like so obviously, when something's like right in front of you, it's like, how do you not see
Yeah.
it? And so I've been really imploring and encouraging 2026 cycle candidates. I'm like, look, we can win by accident the House, or we can win on purpose the House in 2026. And I feel like if we win by accident, we're going to be set up for a hot mess in 2028. And if we win on purpose, I think we'll have a better chance at creating and cultivating the party that can show that it can wield power in an important and responsible way, and is worthy of voters' trust again, right? Because as of right now, we talk about seeing how the Democratic Party approval rating is like literally way below Trump's, right? It's like 10 points below Trump's. I'm like, look, if that's the case, we are in a pickle, guys. So I'm just really encouraged and excited to continue to implore candidates to like, look, be yourself. Um, Welcome looks for candidates that are differentiated from the party brand. And I'm like, look, you don't have to differentiate in a specific policy area. We're not telling you to differentiate specifically on immigration or specifically on whatever, but you need to find a way that doesn't, that disconnects you from the gravity of the party, right? You need to find a way that shows voters that you're a normal person, you feel the same things that they feel, and you are seeing the glaringly obvious stuff that for some reason nobody saw last year, right? Or not a lot of
Hmm.
people saw last year for that matter, I should say. So say that to say excited about, driving, change in the party, trying to encourage people to view things differently. And like literally we talked about this entire podcast is like, how do we just like I'm sorry, calibrate ourselves back to like just genuine, real stuff. And not cookie cutter it, not sugarcoat it, not walk on eggshells, not, again, be the, liberal coded people that people expect us to be, right? How do we
Hmm.
show people that we are different and we're the Democratic Party that's evolving, right? You don't evolve without showing that you are changing. You don't evolve without showing people that you were wrong about some stuff. You don't evolve by not being accountable for your past mistakes, right? So as we are willing to say, look, even, maybe even as a candidate, someone's watching this and they're like, look, maybe you have to say, I was wrong about this subject in whatever cycle before this. Maybe that's what helps voters to understand, like, okay, this person's evolving. They're not the Democrat that is put in the box like so many people are. They are the
Hmm.
Democrat who is willing to change, evolve, be on the 80 side of 80/20 issues and, still be authentic to themselves. So I know I'm like beating a dead horse on this, but like we've got to do this. We have absolutely got to be the change that we want to see. As you said, I keep telling people all the time, there's no hero coming for us. We are our own heroes. And if we
Hmm.
are not going to be a hero, then we need to step aside, right?
Yep.
And we need to not necessarily, we're not saviors. That's reserved for Jesus, right? But we are people who need to be different so that the people of the modern era in 2025 and 2026, when there's like real life different problems, we need to be able to meet them in those moments and show that we are evolving in a way that is able to meet people's problems where they are head on and have solutions that are actually going to happen.
It just takes courage, right? I think it takes courage to like step out, you know. Well, I am so grateful that you took some time with me this morning. It's flown by. I feel like we could talk about this stuff for
I
like
know,
days,
seriously, seriously.
for days and days. So I know I will be, looking forward to following the welcome stack and, kind of taking in everything that you all have to share as we look towards 2026. Where else can folks find you? Do you want to talk a little bit about that? Where should they go to connect with you or to connect with the Welcome Party?
I mean, really just at Welcome Stack, welcomestack.org. So please give us a follow, check out our stuff. You mentioned courage. I just wrote a piece the other day about depolarizing courage. Like, how do we use courage, but in a wise way? Because there's a lot of courage, quote unquote, in the party right now, but it's just polarizing, right? We're just drawing people away from us, and that's really sad. So yeah, give us a follow on Welcome Stack. We're on Twitter as well. Welcome pack. But yeah, that's us, and grateful for your time today, Bridget. It was really lovely to catch up with you and talk through things that are frustrating both of us, and hopefully trying to create some solutions for it and not just complain about it. So
Yes. Thank you so much, Lauren.
absolutely, take care.
Bye.